How I killed my mind. So, I want to share my story because right now I have very, very, very few thoughts. And it's pretty fucking epic. I feel, well, it's part of the story. I don't feel incredible inner peace yet, but I feel at peace, definitely. There's no crazy mental chatter that I used to have. It's just quiet and calm, and I still have some thoughts passing through, but it's really maybe 20% of, or even 10% of what I used to have 4 or 5 years ago. So I wanted to explain my story, explain how I got to this place, and yeah, just kind of share my story, I guess. So basically, I had a spiritual awakening around 3-4 years ago. I had this incredible moment of connection with the universe, and in that moment I realized that all is love, all is one, and all is energy. And that moment just woke me out of my slumber. Before that, I was extremely, extremely unconscious, always in my head, always going through these like hypothetical scenarios of like what I might talk to this person about. You know how you used to have those like mental chatter. And then after that moment, part of me woke up. Part of me was more conscious. I remember the world looked more beautiful after that moment. But then I started meditating. A kind psychic taught me how to meditate in Costa Rica. And I started meditating for like probably 40 minutes, an hour, and I would get to these incredible blissful states. And anyways, around 3 years ago, I realized that something beautiful happens when I'm conscious of my breath and I look at the world around me and I'm like physically present. I just started feeling almost enlightened. In pockets of my life, I felt enlightened. And the garden looked so beautiful and everything slowed down. The sunlight looked holy. And it was just like a special time. And I realized something special happens when I focus on my breath and I slow down and I'm in the present moment. So I made a vow to myself. This was around 3 years ago. I made a vow to myself that I'm going to focus on my breath as my there's a baby crying, I don't know if you can hear that, as my number one intention of my life from now on. And that's a pretty big vow to make for yourself at 23, or I don't know, however old I was. My number one goal of my life was to prioritize the present breath, the breath in this current present moment. And I have not faltered. I like patting myself on the back because it has been years and I've dedicated my life to being conscious of the very breath I'm breathing. And it's a kind of a long story. Basically, it's a very, very long story, and that's probably for another video if I even want to share this story. But I'm going to give you like the very short version of the story, is that I had very, very difficult few years. Going into these intense, blissful states of meditation triggered a psychosis in my brain, and I started seeing bad energy. And talking to other people would lower my vibration and drain me. And I basically started having to be conscious out of fear because I was always constantly trying to raise my vibration. So the point of this is basically, how did I kill my mind? I stopped engaging with my mind 3 years ago. I decided I am not going to engage with my mind. I'm going to let the thoughts pass and I'm not going to engage. I'm going to return to my breath. And I did that. And the part of the story where I felt intense negative emotions during my psychosis for about 1.5 years, 2 years. And during this period, I believe basically when emotions come up, there are certain frequencies of thoughts that are tied to those emotions. And usually they're negative thoughts. negative emotions are tied to negative thoughts. So when I was feeling these intense negative emotions nonstop for a year and a half, I cannot tell you how difficult it was to be in my little body, because my brain, the thoughts coming up in my brain were so negative and constant. It was constant release of these thoughts. But I basically did not engage. I stayed conscious of my breath, and after about a year and a half, they passed. The mind jumble of thoughts passed. I went on medication for my psychosis, and I also went on an antidepressant, which relieved my depression. And basically, now I'm on the medication and on the antidepressant. My mind is so quiet. I really don't have any thoughts. It's pretty incredible. So I believe that what happened was that I basically felt all that I had to feel, and I believe that I thought all that I had to think. All those thoughts that were connected to those emotions almost came out of me and were released. And during this period when I had a deep depression and I went on antidepressants, something happened. The antidepressant triggered all of these suicidal thoughts to come up and out of me. For about 1 week of my life, felt like the longest week of my life, I just had constant suicidal thoughts, and it was so bad I had to hospitalize myself because I was afraid of ending my life. But after a week, that passed. And since that moment, my mind has been so quiet and so empty. I'm now changing antidepressant to another antidepressant, which hopefully will make me feel love and joy. But the point of this is basically I'm trying to get you to be conscious of your breath and to ignore your mind. Because even though I've had a whirlwind, it's been a crazy ride, I have managed to successfully kill my mind. And I'm sorry, little mind, I love you, but you're self-destructive. So I can still think on purpose. When I want to turn it on, I can still do that. But really, I barely ever do that. Only when I'm like trying to remember dates or plan something for a trip. And it's pretty damn peaceful. So yeah, that's my story. That's how I killed my mind in under 10 minutes. And watch this space. I love you. Sending you a lot of love. Namaste.